Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Napoleon Total, and today we're back with the last episode of our Aizu campaign, and this time we're going to be ending the Imperialist threat, or should I say the Imperial clans. And, of course, sadly, this is the last video because we do win the war, and in the last episode, we essentially finished the war with our Shogunate allies, and now we are ending and giving them peace. And then now we are just going to be massing our massive navy, which we saw last time, and now we're just going to be naval landing them on Shokaku. Needless to say, this navy is quite massive. At least 30 units in total, and the fleet around it, although wooden ships, it is quite big. And when I mean big, it is more than enough to stand up to Imperial ships. Needless to say, I'm also deploying my own massive army down, or shall I say out west. But as we can see, we are starting to take ground. 3 armies in the field, and a 4th soon to move in. But as of right now, we are still having deployed a lot of troops yet. We're just gonna assault Awa. And as you can see, this is essentially the first battle of the day. But before we do that, I move my troops a little bit closer so they can become in reinforcement range. But in this battle, which is the largest battle yet, we have 3 full enemy armies, of which 1 is a defending army, and of course, off the bat, we have heavy combat. As you can see here, the enemy reinforcement army is caught by my 2 Shogunate. Eventually, I do send reinforcements, but these Shogunate get about 300 kills each, which is amazing. This enemy army, which is essentially crippled, is essentially destroyed. The enemy garrison army decides to sally out at this time, and thank God my troops were prepared for this. On the other hand, this battle is massive according to the accounts, and my game is lagging, so that's something very unfortunate for you guys. But the enemy is attacking straight into my cannons, and I blast them. Eventually, we do storm the castle because the enemy essentially decided to sally out, and we were able to hold them back. Now, eventually, we're just going to attack them, and they're about to give ground on a massive scale. And this is also the first battle in which I use the Shogunate bows, and these guys are a new unit for this mod, and these guys have extra range, which is amazing, and they fire way faster. Needless to say, I win the massive decisive victory, and I essentially destroyed my enemies on the battlefield. Three armies essentially destroyed, and 1 captured. Well, 1 essentially province captured. And we do see more armies in the field, and the Tosa are instantly going to deploy troops to counter us off the bat. As you can see, a very interesting thing is the fact that the Tosa army is massing up quick, and my response is quite interesting, as you can see later on. This Tosa fortification off the bat is really a problem, and we are going to eventually march on it. But as of right now, we're not going to do it just yet. As you can see right now, instead of confronting those 2 Tosa armies in the field and eventually wait for them to fight them, I'm going to deploy my 2 armies to defend, and the rest are essentially going to be used to essentially march, or should I say sail, to this province. And what we're going to do is we're going to disembark my army, and we're gonna assault the city. Essentially, we went completely around the entire enemy by sea, and we're just gonna land there. Out west, we are deploying 3 armies, or as should I say, as many armies as we physically can to fight our enemies. As you can see, my army is truly massive, and like I said earlier, half my army is pretty much conscripted, or should I say, essentially, well, I essentially made the enemies join me in a very nice way. And of course, we're going to be trying our best to incite revolts, of which they fail, but it's okay, I still have a massive field army. Eventually, I do send my general in personally to take the enemy out, and we fight our second battle. Just not yet, though, because I am deploying my ships, or should I say my navy, to essentially hammer them. And as you can see, the amount of ships I have is more than enough to cause massive panic along the enemy lines. And this, obviously, the fortification has been used, and now I'm going to deploy more and more ships just to attack them. As you can see, I am doing some micromanaging, and I found out that this second fleet couldn't bombard because they're slightly only a hair out of reach. So that's very unfortunate, but needless to say, I ordered my general to assault the place because we have more than enough artillery and bombardment to blast them out. Speaking of blasting them out, my gunners and my archers are able to shoot them, and in my terms of my gunners, I'm talking about essentially my artillerymen. We do essentially wipe out because the Shogunate have more range than regular infantry, and the Shogunate archers right here, you can see them, are essentially peppering this poor spear levy, and this spear levy is essentially about to get demolished after a few volleys. Another interesting thing about the Shogunate bowmen is the fact that they fire very quickly. As you can see, I have only 3 units and they're raining essentially arrows on this poor 1 unit. And what makes it worse is that they're pretty accurate. Needless to say, by now, this entire unit of full units of 200 units is now down to a handful, and they're pretty much dead at this point. Completely. And that took only seconds. On the other hand, the warrior monks that were stationed inside also have a beating, but these are warrior monk cavalry, which are amazing, and instead of sending in my bows, I send in my spears, which are even better at taking them out. Needless to say, I win the battle. And we of course win a decisive victory, and needless to say, I went around 2 full armies, and then I'm essentially going to be taking Shokaku. And now we're replacing, and unfortunately, the enemy army, the 2-stack army that was outside, decided to attack or siege out my place. And thankfully, I am going to fight a field battle, because if they attacked, I would have a hard time because most of my army is made up of artillery. As you can see here, the beginning of the battle started with cavalry charges. Unfortunately for them, my spearmen are right behind them, and essentially what happens is that I countercharge and charge towards the river, because this is a bridge battle. This scene that you see here is me essentially charging towards the enemy encampment, and essentially they are pinned against the back of the river, and they do have a river crossing. Eventually, what this allows me to do is buy up time for my archers and eventually my gunners to come up and open fire on them. Needless to say, this is pretty much hell on earth, although it's just gonna get much, much worse, because as you can see right here, this is not the worst of it. And pretty much, this is pretty much a scene from my point of view. My levy garrisons and my levy garrison infantry are able to shoot at them. Behind them are all my archers, and this is essentially what happens. Needless to say, my archers are very, very accurate, and I do have tons of them, excluding and not limiting to Shogunate archers and regular archers. My gunmen are also very terrifying, even though they're garrison infantry, and although I haven't used artillery in this piece, this is already very decisive victory. As a matter of fact, I will call this essentially a massacre because I lose very little troops compared to what the enemy lost, and they lost a ton. 2 full armies destroyed at that 1 bridge crossing, and now I'm going to send my armies to crush them, or should I say finish them eventually. Which I do. Although I am deploying 2 armies to crush them. Although in this battle I did suffer some casualties, most particularly in my melee infantry, which was used to buy time for my archers and for my gunmen to set up. Needless to say, I win 2 tremendous victories on the field, completely destroying 2 full armies off the face of the earth, and now I'm going to retreat because I do not feel confident enough to essentially press my advantage, because this 2 army is generalless and they don't really have an army in the field. Needless to say, I am going to continue the siege and going to march on the enemy cities. And this is out west in the sense that I'm deploying essentially more than a lot of my armies to counter them. And of course, as you can see here, this is the enemy daimyo and his heir himself, which is kind of interesting. The Tosa daimyo is very fashionable, but like I said in a lot of my older videos, fashion doesn't save you from death. And I'm obviously just going to auto-resolve this because I'm more than certain I'm going to take a lot less casualties. Needless to say, I win a tremendous victory right here, even though I didn't even fight it. And my next goal is killing off their enemy daimyo, which is going to be much easier than I expected, but still very, very hard. Not to mention the fact that the Tosa is on their last province in the west. Or should I say, my west, because this is north of Tosa itself. Needless to say, I'm also preparing my fleet again, because we're going to be swinging around and essentially attacking the enemy settlement. But before we do that, my fleet has to essentially clear out the enemy warships, which are essentially blockading the strait. And as you can see, a lot of Tosa warships are anchored right here, and although some of them flee, I am able to catch most of them. And as a matter of fact, because they fled, my ships have an easier time catching up to them, because now they're spread out. But now, essentially, I'm going to do a massive battle with my enemy fleet, or should I say the enemy fleet, and it wasn't even a battle considering the fact that the entire enemy fleet just got destroyed, and we actually even captured some ships. What's worse is probably the fact that their port is going to be attacked right now, and it's probably going to get completely destroyed, which is what happens. On the other hand, my fleet, which has my army in it, is essentially going to be disembarking as soon as possible, and I'm going to actually have more ships to protect it. Although, if the enemy attack right now, it's going to be in a tricky situation. Needless to say, my army out west, which has essentially a lot of troops, is going to try their best to corner the daimyo. And as of right now, we're just going to do that right here and then. Although, I'm just going to spend more time to gather my army closer and deploy more and more troops and gather my generals closer, and then we're going to have the last massive battle of the game. Because, surprise, surprise, after this battle, we win the game. As you can see, the entire enemy island even decided to sally out, which raises the question of why would they do that, because they had pretty good defenses. Needless to say, here is a scene of my men cheering, and eventually we stormed the fortress itself. Needless to say, after the enemy sallied out, their daimyo not only got killed, but my army was able to eventually finish them quickly. And as you can see here, this is the pinnacle of my entire army because we already have enough weapons to kill them no matter what they do. And as you can see here, my spears, or should I say my katanas, eventually do charge straight at them and we kill them off. And as you can see here, we do essentially try killing them much faster. Needless to say, this was the decisive victory that I wanted, and we kill not only their daimyo, but their last holdings and another army out west, or should I say out north for the Tosa themselves, but out west for me. And this is the part in which I captured the province, and, most surprisingly, I captured and win the game. Victory on the field. Needless to say, I wasn't really surprised by this, although I was surprised by how fast it was. But, needless to say, this is the end of our campaign. Have a great day, guys. Comment in the comment section down below to see what other campaign that you guys want me to do. And have a great day, guys. I'll see you in the next one.